I'm Ben Kitili at the KTN News Center. Very good morning, very good Sunday morning to this 6th day of May 2018. Sunday edition of KTN News. Right now, for the next 120 minutes, we shall be dissecting and analyzing the biggest political and governance stories in this country. We shall be analyzing the State of the Nation address, President Uhuru Kenyatta's first address since being sworn in for his second term. We shall be talking about what he talked about. He did make an impassionate plea to Kenyans for national unity and reconciliation. We'll talk about his Big Four agenda. We'll talk about what was missing, quote unquote, from that speech. We'll talk about what you may have missed in that report. We'll also talk about the battle for the rift playing out yesterday in Baringo South during Grace Kipchoim's burial, where Deputy President William Ruto as well as Baringo Senator Gideon Moi were present. Ruto's allies telling Gideon Moi to shelve his presidential ambitions. We'll talk about all that. Also, the latest, the headlines in the local dailies. Senator James Orengo saying that Raila Odinga is still ODM's top choice for presidential candidate in 2022. Just what gives. Also, apparently there are leaders lining up from central Kenya to try and catch Deputy President William Ruto's eye to be his running mate in 2022. We'll talk about some of those names and just what that formula is supposed to be. My panel is already here with me. I have with me lawyer and political strategist Kipchumba Karori. I have with me communication experts and political analysts Hesbon Owila and Mark Bichach, as well as political risk analyst Dismas Mokwa. They will be helping me to put some perspective into some of these stories. Welcome to the broadcast. Let's take a look at the latest headlines in the local dailies this morning. To the broadcast, let's begin with the political pages as we always do here. Let's start with what's the splash in the Sunday Standard. Good morning, gentlemen. Thank you for joining me this morning, as always. So Raila in 2022 race. This is following what was said by the Siaya Senator James Orengo, saying, and I quote, "Some people are saying Raila should retire, but we firmly believe he has not accomplished his goal." So Senator Orengo starting some controversy with that declaration as Raila Odinga tried to steer clear of that talk, only talking about the building bridges initiative. Dismas, let me start with you. What do you read from this?
In my view, Senator Orengo has let the cat out of the bag. This is the reason why Raila bolted out of NASA. That's why he went for the handshake, because he knows the NASA coalition agreements or instruments suggested that during the next presidential election in 2022, ODM would not present a candidate.
Right.
And I think Raila Odinga, by going to Uhuru Park and being sworn in as the people's president, he was creating that opportunity for him to do a run on NASA. And the fact that he's now building bridges, it's a confirmation that he's been burning every bridge that he comes across.
All right.
Which would be maybe a good idea for ODM.
All right. This story is on page 7 of the Sunday Standard. Mark, Governors Joho, Asanali Joho and Wycliffe Oparanya, are the ODM deputy party leaders, have expressed interest in that ODM ticket. What does this mean for them?
The shadow of Raila Odinga's career looms large over the political landscape in this country. Right. And whether he decides to participate or not, he will be the decision maker as to who becomes president in 2022, either by action or inaction. Raila Odinga is indispensable. Now, the question for them has to be the question of succession planning within ODM, which we know, as far as political lives go in this country, there's been very little succession. In fact, the only succession we know on record is between Mzee Jomo Kenyatta and President Moi. We've not seen another handover of power from president to deputy in a while. And therefore, the reality of the matter is this. The questions that we must answer is, will ODM survive as a unit beyond 2022? Secondly, in the wake of the handshake, Will Raila Odinga decide to be a kingmaker, a statesman, a nationalist, a pan-Africanist, or will he decide to put his heart in the race again? I think either way, Raila Odinga is okay. But for Joho and Oparanya and the rest, the issue becomes is that they cannot run for any other position. You cannot see a Joho MP, you cannot see a Joho senator, and therefore the battle looms large within ODM. And there is a likelihood that they would break off to try to form splinter groups in the wake of 2022.
All right, Hezbon, what do you think about this?
This is just testing the waters, and I want to believe that it's just a ploy to ensure that Raila is still in the public domain, and there is that intensity in the hope among his supporters. And from where I sit, I want to believe that it is too delicate a matter, because the bulk of the support that Raila has, he has because of the people who are, with him, the likes of Governor Joe, Wycliffe Oparanya, and just like Mark says, when you start this kind of a conversation, and especially if it is coming from Raila himself, it is likely to antagonize them. And because they have nowhere to go, they'll be looking for a direction that can give them, a shorter route to powerful positions. And suffice to say, Raila has achieved all he can achieve in politics. Running for the presidency in 2022 is a big risk for him to take, unless he's very sure. For the simple reason that if he is beaten in 2022, I think everything that he has worked for, will be forgotten. We'll remember him for his presidential...
Be risking his legacy, is
yes,
what you're saying.
We'll remember him for having lost enough elections. At this moment, we actually remember Raila for a lot of things, and the fact that he won, at least from where I see it, the last 2 presidential elections. Not even the last 2, the last 3. So where he has reached, all he needs to do is just to ensure that we have a country that is built on the ideas that he has always propagated.
All right, Kipchumba, this is coming from Orengo, one of Odinga's closest allies. So is it as good as law in terms of the truth of has he let the cat out of the bag, like Dismas said? And what is this likely to do in that ODM outfit?
Yes, that coming from Orengo, I would say it is Raila who has communicated. Only that the names are mixing the public. But maybe to correct this, Wheeler, is to, first of all, is that the records in this country show when we mention the 4 presidents, Raila is not in between. So to mislead the public that there is an election that has been won by Raila, we are risking the credibility of the show. And to come back to Raila Odinga, I think Raila needs to go back to the 48 laws of power. There is a law there that talks about knowing when to stop. He has achieved pretty much. Maybe he's trying to defend his record as being the presidential candidate who has lost most. If he goes to 2022, that is the only record he can defend.
Is it possible that push to change the constitution, the issue of creating an executive prime minister and all that, maybe is that the play?
When discussing Raila Odinga, first of all, you must give it to him. He's a political giraffe. He knows how to play around and how to keep the masses guessing on what his next move will be. And I think he must continue to possess presidential ambition or any other ambition bigger than the president, maybe an executive prime minister, so that the masses can continue being glued at him. If you are a magician today and you tell people my magic stopped working, nobody will be in your shelter the next day. So I think it's just being a good magician.
All right. Also, away from Raila Odinga, on the headline for the Sunday Nation, leaders, succession politics still, leaders lining up to catch, on the other side of the political divide, leaders lining up to catch Ruto's eye for 2022 contest. This is a story that is on page 19 on the Sunday Review. Just highlighting some of the leaders that are lining up, like Gatundu South MP Moses Kuria is being mentioned here, the Muranga Senator Irungu Kangata, the Governor Mwangi wa Iria, the Kieni MP Kanini Kega, Rigathi Gachagua, as well as the Tharaka-Nithi Senator Kithure Kindiki. There is an agreement, Dismas, within Jubilee quarters for Central Kenya to support William Ruto in 2022. And Central Kenya leaders are lining up to be his running mate. Is that the formula?
Well, you're opening a Pandora's box because word in the streets suggests that President Kenyatta and the Deputy President Ruto signed a gentleman's agreement that Ruto would support Kenyatta for the presidential election for the 2 terms he was running. But when you speak to voters where the rubber meets the road, a number of people will tell you that was an agreement between Ruto and Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta. As a community, we were not consulted. That's number one. The number two, these politicians are very clever, almost mischievous. They've indicated they're going to support the Deputy President 2022. They have not indicated whether or not they're going to vote for him. You know, support and voting is so different because when you go to IBC, what matters is the actual vote. It's not support. But be that as it may, probability of the Deputy President winning this election right now is almost 50%. So any rational politician, especially from Central Kenya, would be very interested in positioning themselves as a running mate. But the big question would be, since we attained independence, we've had a leadership in Kenya coming from 2 communities.
Right.
And is the entire nation going to be happy with that pendulum, that it has to keep on moving from some 2 or 3 specific regions? Maybe there's an opportunity for the Deputy President to say, I'm going to break this cycle and I'm going to Western Kenya, maybe pick on Ken Lusaka, or I'm going to Coast, maybe pick on Hassan Omar, or even I'm going to Garissa, get somebody like Duale. So I think for Ruto, he's spoiled for choice. And at this stage, you know, these MPs are seeking for favors, and we understand that the Deputy President is very proactive. He's got a very tight schedule, and if you're on his good side, you'll get some opportunities coming your way. So these MPs are merely doing that. And the Central Kenya vote is so fickle that you cannot do a 4-year projection because it changes overnight. All it needs is for a person to say at a funeral, although they hardly attend funerals, but somebody to say at a funeral that we are reviewing our political architecture in Kenya, and kura ni siri, sio deni. And at that stage, Ruto will find himself in big trouble.
All right. Mark, what is your take on all this? There has been talk of some leaders telling Ruto that, you know, Central Kenya vote is not guaranteed for you. I mean, how important is it for him?
There are a number of things that Ruto has to do, and I don't think his chief worry is whether Central is going to vote for him or not. The reality of the matter is there is zero chance that Ruto has a person from Central as a running mate. It's going to be impossible. It will be grossly unpopular. It will be treated as a repeat of history. So the likes of Moses Kuria hoping to be his running mate, that's an exercise in futility. However, the question that William Ruto has to ask himself is whether Jubilee will exist at 2022. If Jubilee exists at a party and it holds strong as it has in Western Kenya, in parts of Kisii, in parts of Coast, in parts of Ukambani, then he's able to inherit the Jubilee vote. What he needs to work on, if he is to win regardless of the tribal mathematics, is to hold together a nationalistic party and hope, therefore, that ODM continues to disparage the likes of Wiper and Ford Kenya, that now you have 2 national-looking parties fighting it out. If, however, the elections do get to be tribal again, then the reality of the matter is he has to find a way of keeping that all-important Central Kenya vote within the basket. He needs to be able to do that because as things are shaping out, it might be a 2 or 3 horse race. And if he cannot keep them there, then he will have to...
Can he keep them in the basket without them being on the presidential ticket?
He can, and the possibility of this is that if the position of a chief minister is created, and there are 2 proposals now, there's the proposal of going a referendum way, which is what ODM is proposing, and if WhatsApp messages are to be believed, there is a way it can be done outside of having a referendum. But either way, my prediction on this show is this, that there will be a position of a chief minister minister, and that chief minister is most likely going to come from the central region.
Right.
If he does that, that's how he's going to keep the central region within his basket of votes.
All right, Hesbon, how does the DP play it?
I think as it is right now, it's fairly difficult unless you have a change in structure of the executive, where you expand it a bit and you can accommodate somebody from Central who is not necessarily the Deputy President. Now, I think it's also clear that the Deputy President is in a very precarious position in as far as treating the Mount Kenya region is concerned, for the simple reason that, I mean, this is a vote-rich region, 5 million plus, and you cannot just wish them away. You must give them something substantive. And then the other thing is, if you have them, you will also be bedeviled by the issues of, this power has been in Mount Kenya region, and having the second in command from this region is like, giving it just a break for 5 years or 10 years, and then you take it back, and that is a bit tricky. And then on the other hand, it's a lot more difficult again to have a Westerner, because a Westerner and the Deputy President, I mean, that ticket will be more Western, and I think you'll have a problem with the rest of the country and getting those votes. And those, I think, are the things that the Deputy President is tightly grappling with, given the conversations about changing the referendum, which, from where I see it, if it is done, it actually favors him more than any other person. Because then it gives him a broader base on which to play around with the geopolitics of this country. But having said that, I think a lot of these guys, just like Dismas says, a lot of them make a lot of noise just to attract the attention of the DP and maybe get a few goodies here and there. The perception on the ground, and if you look at the conversations on social media, you'd actually realize that it really doesn't matter what a lot of these leaders from Mount Kenya region are saying. There's a sense in which a lot of folks on the ground are actually with the Deputy President. And majority of these folks who are talking say, our support is with you, we will support you in 2022, are actually following, the site that is on the ground. I mean, people are very receptive of the DP's candidature in the Mount Kenya region, for the simple reason that, he has supported one of their own for the last 10 years.
All right, Kipchumba, Deputy President William Ruto, is it a good problem for him to have?
As much as, or any time you still have political ambition, there are problems that you will always grapple with. And I think, speaking 8 months since the swearing in of President Uhuru Kenyatta, it's too early to predict. Too early to know who will stick where. Politicians will always be politicians. They have no strict principle. They might say the whole day we support you, but things will change. But as Owila has said, anytime you interact with a good number of Mount Kenya voters, you get a feeling that it is a decision that has been made from the people, not from the leaders, that they'll support Deputy President William Ruto. What now the Deputy President must do is to think of how to make his bid a nationalistic bid as opposed to a Kulipa Deni bid. A bid whereby we'll have all tribes, all communities. And he has demonstrated in the past that he can do that. Looking at his own political party that he had formed some time back, URP, it had leaders from all the regions. So I think he has a chance.
He has the mobilization power.
Yeah, he has the mobilization power. He's blessed with the resources, and he has the tenacity to bring all these other communities. But to think that a Kikuyu or a person from Mount Kenya will be his deputy, I think is overstretching our imagination. Look at it this way. You've talked about Moses Kuria. Moses Kuria comes from the same constituency with President Uhuru Kenyatta. It is not politically correct or logic to give it to from the same constituency. What about somebody who comes from Laikipia? You have to look at it that way. We need to now consider, when we talk about the Mount Kenya region, we need to talk about the central part. Laikipia, Nyandarua, there is a region there that feels it has not been represented adequately.
Right.
And that is why Governor Waiguru comes in strongly.
All right. Interesting.
Ben,
Still early days? Yes,
if you would be trying to look for logic in Kenyan politics, then you'd be wasting your time. Because the logic demands that Kenya as a nation 50 years after independence, the presidency should have been shared in the entire country. So maybe right now the president should be a Kisii man from my village in Mosocho. But it cannot happen because in as much as it's logical, it cannot happen because when people eventually, when the rubber meets the road, it's about these numbers and political interest. And that's why when Kipchumba Karori says that we need to look at logic, there's no logic in the Kenyan political space. It's all about selfish interest. And it seems to me that the one community that has identified their selfish interest very well is the Mount Kenya community. For them, they know what they're looking for. So during the day, they'll have a conversation with you. They'll tell you we're going to support you 2022. We'll live and vote for you. But at night, you remember Sonko said sections of Mount Kenya community are having nocturnal meetings. What is the purpose of those meetings? I mean, if during the day you've told Ruto, we are going to support you, we are going to vote for you, then again, why are you having nocturnal meetings? So it's not yet over till the fat woman says.
All right, let's talk about more about that. And of course, it's still very early days, 2022, succession politics, running mates and all that. Yeah, but it is politics. Now, still on the cover page, on page 4 and 21 of the Sunday Nation, Raila's radical plan to change the power structures in this country. Of course, he has called a meeting of the top organ of the ODM party to discuss about those far-reaching changes. He wants to change, to introduce a parliamentary system of government as well as a three-tier devolved system. According to insiders, Raila want these proposals, which he believes will save Kenya from the perennial do-or-die fight for the all-powerful presidency. Let me start with you, Mark.
You know what I find funny is how is the solution to an all-powerful presidency an all-powerful prime minister? It's the same nonsense. Let's be very clear that what needs to happen in this country is, first of all, a sense of maturity. Secondly, it's the dignification of the opposition. I think that's the most important thing. What we need to discuss as a country is Raila Odinga got 4.8 million votes or 80,000 votes, depending on which election you're talking about. Now, that makes him the de facto leader of opposition. Now, as such, what is his position in Kenyan politics when he loses? Let's assume there is no Raila, there is no Uhuru, there is no Ruto. It's now 2032. Now, in 2032, can you imagine Ben Kitili running for president? You get number 2, you have 10 million votes. And the day after that, there is no chase car, there's no role for you in the political space. That is the mistake that we need to correct. The correction of that is very simple. Put your name as the first one to be nominated to Parliament or Senate after the elections. It's very simple to solve that. No, that's the truth. Because why didn't we have this problem in 1997? Why didn't we have it in 2002? In fact, in 2007, why did we have it? It's very simple. Because every person who ran for presidency had a position within Parliament and Senate from which they could continue to represent the interests of their people.
Because of time, let me get your thoughts, Dismas. Do you agree? Is the presidency the cause of all our problems?
I wouldn't say that the presidency is the cause of our problem. The presidency is the cause of all the mischief taking place in Kenya because it's all powerful. Actually, if you're in West Africa and you are the president, we would easily say you've got the yam and you've got the knife. So you've been given a blank check. You can dance however you want.
So you support these proposals by Raila Odinga?
Having a presidential system has been demonstrated in many countries. Most fragile countries have adopted a parliamentary system. We are not sure of the exact details on what Raila Odinga is talking about, but having a parliamentary system is very solid. And I see Bichache is forming, but you can go to Israel, you can go to Italy, you can go to India, New Zealand, Japan. The examples run. I mean, even South Africa is a parliamentary democracy. Now, when you have a parliamentary democracy, it means that MPs actually become powerful legislators. And then number 2, you've got a very strong bureaucracy. So that even if, I mean, you know the fear
but
people
it's not
say,
what Raila Odinga is proposing, is it?
He's proposing a parliamentary democracy. Of course, it's going to be modified depending on how the
prime minister.
I mean,
same problem.
There's no way you're going to have a prime minister in a parliamentary democracy who is not powerful. Because for you to become a prime minister in a parliamentary democracy, it means you had the majority party or you form the biggest coalition. Meaning that if you don't deliver as a prime minister, then those MPs can kick you out. The way it's been happening in Italy. Therefore, you must have a very strong bureaucracy.
All right. Let me get Hesbon's thoughts on this very quickly as you went.
Well, I think, we need to stop comparing Kenyans with other countries and looking at history in a way that is skewed. As it is right now, we devolved governance, but then we made the presidency a lot more powerful, and everyone wants to be the president, And if you have a president and he has majority in parliament, then it means that parliament is just an extension of State House. And we need to give credit to Raila's foresight that we are looking at a situation where we are not going to have an election where the loser, even if you're losing by a slight margin, is thrown out of the political dispensation.
But that's what happens in presidential systems.
Yes,
we have a presidential system. Hillary Clinton won the majority vote, millions of votes, and still
Ben,
she has to...
in the 1920s, the United States of America had the same problems when a presidential candidate called Al Smith lost an election. And he was saying that how can you campaign all over the country? You understand the problems of so many people in the country. They give you the vote up to around 40%, and then you're out in the cold. But the United States of America is not Kenya. Their democracy is more than 300 years old.
Right.
So they found a way of addressing that. But then if you come back to Kenya, our politics is such that we must find a way of being inclusive, not just at the political level, because inclusivity must be political, economic, ecological. I think we need to start from the political level, where we have a very inclusive government. And it's not a question of accommodating losers, like Mark is trying to insinuate, that if you think you're going to lose, nominate yourself. You will definitely lose.
I think that is what you're saying. Accommodate losers. Let me get Kipchumba, because of time. Let me get your thoughts on this very quickly.
First of all, as a person and as a matter of principle, calling an executive prime minister having the same powers the president has now is just semantics. What we need to address is simple. Let us address the Kenyan appetite for corruption, all these other things. Because what has made presidency what it is now, lucrative and everything, is the feeling that our time to eat is here. If we deal with that notion, we will be off to the right footing. But whether it is Ben Kitili, the president today, and the notion of our time to eat is, we will find all the Kamba people lining up there and saying this is our thing. But if today we have maturity in our politicians, we will have a chance to break from whatever we've been seeing.
Right.
And look at it this way. You want us to entrust the presidency to parliamentarians. Look at what they are doing with CDF, as little as the money is. Look at what they are doing outside in their social activities.
Right.
They do not reflect a mature group of individuals who can be allowed to have...
So the parliamentary system is not foolproof?
It's not foolproof. And then again, we do not have the caliber of parliamentarians to be bestowed with that honor.
All right, let's leave it there. It's a topic that we have to come back sometime and discuss in much more detail. It's very interesting. And so we leave it for the political pages. You can be sure to grab your copy of the Sunday Standard for an in-depth look at the top stories this Sunday morning. Let's take a quick commercial break here on Sunday edition on KTNU. Stay with us. This is Kenya's premier and only Sunday morning political show. When we return, we'll get into the politics. We'll talk about the battle for the rift. Stay with us.